It's January 3rd, 2023. We're on our way to Waterloo Station to ride the Southwestern Railway to Portsmouth.
Once again, ladies and gents, circle line, circle.
Before we can get to Waterloo, we take a quick trip on the London Underground's District Line. We connect with the Waterloo and City Line into Waterloo National Rail Station. Waterloo Station is London's third busiest station and is the terminus for Southwestern Railways, which serves commuters coming in from the south and west of London for their daily commutes. Southwestern Railways runs about 1,700 trains per day, which makes it Europe's busiest commuter rail service. We're at Waterloo Station on a weekday morning, meaning there's a ton of trains coming in from London suburbs packed full of commuters. We're taking a train in the opposite direction, leaving London in the morning, which means our train would be completely empty. Our train is the 9:30 a.m. London Waterloo to Portsmouth Harbour train, scheduled to arrive at 11:02 a.m. Arriving at London Waterloo, it takes about 15 minutes for our train to be called and for us to be allowed onto the platform. Train boarding in the UK works by watching the monitors in the station concourse, and about 15 minutes prior to your train departing, as long as it's on time, the station platform is announced and you'll be allowed to scan through the ticket barriers and walk to your train. Our train is one of Southwest Trains Class 444 electric multiple units. This is a 10-car train typically used for longer distance services such as this Portsmouth route. Being closer to the end of the platforms, and being an American, I was absolutely stunned by the sheer number of trains coming into London Waterloo. It seemed like there was a train coming in every few minutes, with sometimes there being 2 or 3 trains coming in at once. This train coming in is another Class 444, and the train I'm zooming in on is one of Southwest Trains' very old Class 455 units, soon to be replaced by the Class 701. This Class 444 interior was pretty well kept. There's a luggage rack on the top, and the seats are in a 2x2 configuration, ideal for longer haul trips. There's a small tray table at the front of the seat, and there's a UK-style power outlet and armrests. The seats were comfortable and definitely enough for the longer journeys of 2 to 3 hours on these trains. As I was filming the chair, a Class 450 arrives in the station with another Class 450 behind it. These are typically used on medium to short haul trips around the network and services that make more stops in between.
They like to put bread inside, like alongside the pork and all that. That's why it's not like 1% meat. It's like either like 97.7, and then like the rest of it is bread. So I guess that's good fun.
Our train leaves right on time, with a Class 450 following us on the right side. At this point in the trip, we had the entire train car to ourselves, and we would continue having the entire train car to ourselves for the rest of the journey. We were in car 3 of this 10-car train. Southwest Trains runs 3 train trips to Portsmouth Harbour a day. This is the fastest of those trips, taking just over an hour and a half, the slowest of which takes about an hour and 20 minutes and makes far more stops along the way.
Good morning, Chicago. So this is the 9:30 Southwestern Railway service to Portsmouth Harbour via Kilford, with our estimated time arrival at 2 minutes past 11. We apologise for the 3-minute delay there at London Waterloo. We're just waiting for the signal to change.
We're one of 2 trains departing at the same time, the Class 450 that I filmed previously and the Class 455, typically used for all-stop services closer to London. We passed through our first station along the route, Vauxhall. Our train soon passes one of London's busiest non-terminus railway stations, Clapham Junction, which services South West Railways and Southern Railways. Our train is one of the few services a day that doesn't stop there. At Woking, our train splits on the Portsmouth Direct route, southbound to Portsmouth Harbour.
To left north. Safety information displayed in our coach.
At this point in the journey, the railway becomes a lot less busy as we leave a lot of the London-bound commuter trains behind.
Guildford is 7 minutes.
Our train is still completely empty, being a peak morning train exiting London. It was winter when I filmed this video, so we did see a good bit of rain, but all in all, we did get pretty lucky with the weather on this trip, being that it did not rain in Portsmouth or London during the entire trip, and really only rained for a few minutes in between. Being an American, and this being my first train trip in Europe, I want to talk a bit about the experience and how it compares to US train travel. Being in London Waterloo and seeing the sheer number of trains departing, it's pretty clear to see that there's an extremely large number of destinations and trains leaving from a bunch of different London terminuses throughout the day. Additionally, the rolling stock is pretty different from the United States, as EMUs are typically only used in metro-style operations in the US, while they're used in semi-fast and fast long-distance services in the UK. This was just the start of a long trip in Europe that I had where I got to see a lot of different trains. And this is where I started to realize something that I didn't expect of European trains. The legroom and general comfort is actually not as good as American trains. The legroom on these services was pretty acceptable, but throughout my trip I got to experience a few different UK and Greater Europe trains that had pretty bad comfort and legroom when compared to American Amtrak services, which give you far more room and legroom in your space. I'd rate the Class 4-4 pretty comfortable for long distance though, it being a 2x2 configuration with tray tables and outlets. That wasn't the case in other train videos that you'll see posted later in my channel, where the services were pretty bare bones and actually probably had less seat than a Southwest Airlines or a Spirit Airlines seat. It was pretty bad, but the Class 4-4 was adequately comfortable, so it made for a pretty good trip to Portsmouth. Our train is now about halfway down the Portsmouth Direct route and is pulling into Petersfield. This is where the landscape gets much more rural and the towns are much smaller as we get closer to Portsmouth. A few more minutes pull by and we're pulling out of Fratton, just 2 stations away from Portsmouth. The train is still on time and is set to arrive at Portsmouth at 11:02 a.m. The second to last station is Portsmouth and Southsea, where a good number of services from Southeastern and Southwest Railways terminate. Our train will continue the complete route though to Portsmouth Harbour. Our train arrives into Portsmouth Harbour on time. While in Portsmouth, we visited the National Museum of the Royal Navy, which is just a 5-minute walk from the Portsmouth Harbour Station. The museum was massive, and we didn't even get through half of it.
train and the platform edge.
Portsmouth Harbour is served by Southwestern Railways primarily, but is also served by Southern and by Great Western Railway. This is a GWR Class 166 adjacent to our train. And this was our 10-car Class 444 train that took us in from London. Across from the station is the HMS Warrior, which is the largest ship of Queen Victoria's naval fleet. On the other side of the station, you can see Spinnaker Tower. Sitting in Portsmouth Harbour, I spotted these old freight wagons. For the return trip, we'll be taking the 5:45 p.m. direct train from Portsmouth Harbour to London Waterloo. Our train will again be operated by Class 444, with the Class 450 operating a less direct service to London Waterloo.
Platform 4 for the 1845 Southwestern
One of the
Railway.
two Class 444 sets on the 10-car train was the decorated Pride livery for Southwest Railways. Hilariously, something that we're not used to being Americans was that all the train doors remain closed unless you push the button to open them. In the United States, all the train doors open no matter how cold it is outside. This was something that confused us at first, but we understood once we saw the lights around the door. Our train back would again be very empty as we are returning off-peak in the opposite direction of rush hour. On the way back, we took the same route as on the way there. So that means the Portsmouth direct route connecting with the direct way to London Waterloo. Now is a good time to talk about the tickets that we bought for this trip, how much it cost, and why I found this pretty interesting as an American. Our round-trip tickets cost about $44.50 per person. I had a young person's rail card, which gave me a discount on my fare. Without that rail card, I think it would have been about $51 per person. This is pretty steep, especially when you compare it to a comparable length train journey in the United States, which would cost you about $30 to $40. That being said, the complexity of booking this trip was actually something that I was not ready for. The UK has a lot of different train tickets, and depending on when you travel, where you travel, what time of day, what service you're picking, etc., the options actually could be cheaper in different ways. So on this trip, we actually had an all-day return ticket, which actually would have allowed us to travel on any train that day. That's because it was actually the same price as a any-day single, which would have limited us to the trains that we had scheduled. I booked my tickets using Trainline. This is definitely not a sponsored advertisement for them, but it made it a little bit easier, even though navigating the different types of train tickets is something that you'll have to learn if you plan to travel by train in the UK. If you're visiting on a trip, I'd also recommend doing the math to see if a rail card saves you money, as I saved about a third on all the train trips I did in the UK, minus the Eurostar, which will be a later video. We arrive into London Waterloo at 7:29 p.m., right on time. I had a few minutes to film a few trains at London's Waterloo station before heading back to my hotel for the night to explore London the next day. This is when I learned a pretty valuable lesson of UK rail fanning, and definitely something that isn't talked about for Americans who visit hoping to take pictures of trains. I was approached by a member of staff who asked if I had a permit to film, to which I responded, "I'm taking pictures for a family vacation." I did not have much gear on me. I had no tripods, just a backpack and a small camcorder. As it turns out, this is a Network Rail owned station, and in order to take any pictures, yes, any pictures with any camera, no matter how unassuming, you need a train enthusiast permit. So later in my time in the UK, I actually got this permit at multiple different stations and was able to go down to the end of the platform and film tons of trains. So the benefit is that if you follow the permit procedure, you can actually go and film all the trains that you want without getting bothered, which is pretty cool. The downside of that is that if you're taking pictures for a family vacation or just kind of casually taking pictures like I am, I really have a low profile. There's not much gear that I bring with me on these trips. Then you're not allowed to. So it was a jarring experience, but one that I was sure to comply with in future videos. I did get the chance to walk down and see one of the very few Class 458 units. These have a storied history that I am not equipped to explain, but they are converted units from another railway, as well as a bunch of Class 450s, 455s, and 444s. I did make it all the way down to the former Eurostar platforms. Before the Eurostar used London St Pancras, they also used the platforms at London Waterloo. And that was my trip, which ended with a return trip on the London Underground from London Waterloo back to my hotel. So, some final thoughts on my trip. I was pretty impressed by the sheer number of trains and destinations that you could go from just from this one station, and that would be a constant theme through my time in Europe. The train was very clean, and this one was pretty comfortable. The ticketing system is very complex, especially for someone who's not from Europe or from London. But overall, a pretty awesome experience taking it to Portsmouth Harbor, and I'm looking forward to posting all my other videos from taking trains all over the UK and into Europe. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe for those videos, and I'll see you in the next one.